He wasn't stealing, hiding, or doing anything wrong, just sitting alone in a pitch-dark room long after everyone else had left. Most people wouldn't even notice a cleaner, let alone wonder why he was still there. But behind that silence was a secret he refused to let the world take from him. No light, no resources, no recognition, only determination in the shadows where no one was meant to see him. Someone did, though, a man with more money than some countries. In that quiet moment, something shifted. When the invisible finally gets noticed by someone who was never supposed to care, does it change the story, or only expose how deep the darkness goes? Devin had always been the kind of man people looked past. He cleaned floors in a towering corporate building where names dissolved into uniforms and respect was reserved for titles etched on glass. Each evening, as offices emptied and lights fell to a dull glow, he moved room to room, finishing a shift that stretched into the hours most people used to sleep. To the world that passed him, he was a task completed, a spill removed, a shadow that moved when others were gone. What no one saw were the minutes after the work ended, when tired feet carried him not home to rest, but to a forgotten storage room down a narrow hallway that no one used. The walls were cool, the air stale, and the darkness complete. He never complained. He learned to make silence a shelter, and the dark a classroom. In his bag was a worn textbook, edges feathered by time, margins crowded with notes that turned uncertainty into a plan. He had no desk, no lamp, no quiet place that belonged to him. He had only that room, that book, and a hope that refused to dim. Every page he turned in near darkness was a small rebellion against a world that made ambition feel like trespass. He believed no one knew. He believed no one ever would. But the night everything changed had already begun, quietly, like any other, while someone who was never meant to notice drifted closer than he realized. The building's silence swelled until every sound felt exposed. Devin slipped into the storage room by habit, set his bag down, and let muscle memory unfurl the pages he had memorized in shapes, not light. He traced underlined lines with his thumb, a ritual that reminded him why effort mattered when recognition didn't. He carved out a place in shadows because the world had refused him one in daylight. Whispers had already started to move without him. A guard had mentioned someone lurking after hours. A supervisor joked that cleaners should keep to mops, not books. No one confronted him. They simply watched, waited, and gathered confirmation for what they already believed. Days earlier, he'd passed a late-night cluster of employees returning from a company dinner. He nodded and moved on, but the muttered laughter behind him followed like a cold draft. Some people, they said without saying, did not know when to stop pretending they could be more. That night he bent again over the book he could barely see, turning paragraphs into patterns and formulas into memory when the lines blurred. His dream wasn't dramatic. It was steady and fragile, a small light cupped against the wind. All it took was one unlocked door and one unexpected arrival to change everything. The millionaire who owned the company almost never appeared after hours. His presence lived in photos and headlines more than hallways. He returned for a briefcase left behind, expecting emptiness, but a soft shuffle in an unlit corridor brushed his attention. He followed without urgency, guided by curiosity more than concern. Devin didn't hear the first steps. He was inside the rhythm of repetition, inside the silence he trusted. The door creaked, and his heart leaped. He hovered over the choice to hide the book or himself. The door drifted inward slowly, with a stillness that chilled the room. The silhouette that formed was not a guard and not a co-worker. It was someone whose shoes did not usually touch floors like these. For a heartbeat he considered a lie, a performance, a retreat into the invisibility he knew by heart. His pulse roared. He knew how he was seen, a cleaner who should vanish when lights went out. The voice that entered the room was not loud and not angry, only surprised. In that instant, the darkness stopped protecting him. Motion sensors stirred the hallway to life. Footsteps formed a net around the room. A night supervisor and 2 guards arrived with certainty already written on their faces. They didn't ask for context. They didn't ask for a reason. They saw a body in a place they believed it shouldn't to be, and let the rest right itself. A radio crackled and words like possible trespass and unauthorized presence hung in the air, like a verdict in search of evidence. The millionaire stood still, silent at first, watching how quickly assumptions condensed into action. Devon raised his hands slowly, not from instruction, but from memory, because he had learned how quickly a man like him could be made to fit a story. Humiliation and fury twisted in his chest. He was not breaking in. He was building a life. Somehow that felt like threat enough. One guard drew closer. Certainty hardened into posture. The book lay open on the floor where it had slipped from Devon's grip. Pages spread like confession. Education framed as defiance. What followed would not stay hidden in the shadows, and it would not be quiet. Time tightened around him until breath felt borrowed. The guards closed in as if danger had a skin color and a uniform. The supervisor's glance slid over the textbook and narrowed, as if seeking proof that a cleaner wanting more was an offense. The radio hissed again, a story being built faster than facts could catch it. Devon's chest burned with the shame of being measured by eyes that refused to see him. The millionaire's gaze moved from darkness to floor to the book on rags. Calculation flickered without warmth. Devon stood with hands lifted into the stale air, not pleading, not resisting, but bracing for the weight of a decision he did not control. He had been talked down to and laughed at and threatened with replacement. This felt different. This felt like a door that could lock behind him for years, or a door that might just once open. A guard's boots scraped closer. If they pulled him out, the hallway would carry a version of the truth that erased him. He would be marked as a man in a place he did not belong again. The millionaire moved at last, deliberate, voice steady, authority settling over the room like an instruction the walls recognized. The guards paused, then retreated a step, then another, faces tight with reluctance, order tugging them back from the edge they were eager to cross. Silence followed, not like victory, but like exposure. Devon felt the heat of all the stories that ended differently and the fragile chance that this one might not. He understood in a single, breathless instant that his future might be decided by someone who had never once had to wonder if he had one. The next move would not just end a night. It could redraw the shape of his life. The tension didn't shatter with noise. It shifted with choice. The millionaire stepped fully into the room, not with apology, but with the certainty of someone who knew his words could part the air. He told the guards to stand down. They did, but their eyes clung to Devon as if yielding were a nuisance rather than a correction. The hush that followed did not feel like safety. It felt like truth in bright light. He looked at the book and then at the darkness that had been Devon's classroom. For the first time, someone with power recognized not just the cleaner, but the distance he had been forced to cross for the smallest chance to be seen as more. There was no admission of guilt and no grand speech. There were questions, practical and pointed, and then a chain of decisions that rippled beyond this room. Unused offices lit, a small space set aside for study, materials ordered, access granted. Some called it generosity. Others muttered about avoiding scandal. For Devon, it was a crack in a wall he had pushed against his entire life. The deeper impact lived elsewhere. The looks did not stop. The whispers did not fade. Doubt did not evaporate because one man intervened. One moment did not erase the years of being underestimated, unseen, or treated like ambition was trespass. Devon returned to his pages with the same determination he had before anyone noticed. His progress became a quiet rebellion, a steady reminder that potential should not require permission. In time, the space he used grew into something others found their way to. Night shift workers seeking certification, cleaners preparing for exams, temps finishing applications. Proof that a door opened for one can become a hallway for many. The building began to change, not all at once and not everywhere, but in small, persistent ways that signaled a different kind of light. Yet the question that lingered was heavier than any policy. Why did it take the presence of wealth to validate a dream that already existed? How many more lives are forced to study in the dark because the world insists the problem is their vision, not the absence of light? Devon kept going, not because someone finally allowed it, but because he always had, even when no one watched. His story is not a miracle. It is a mirror. And if this mirror unsettles, it is because it shows how easily a system can confuse compassion with control and access with grace. How many more dreams must fight their way through shadows before we admit we built the darkness and decide to turn on the lights for everyone?